Probably it was the sense of insecurity that forced them to take a negative stance. I could understand them. I never felt offended, nor did I blame them for it. I just hoped that they would realize the importance of what I was trying to do. In the autumn of 1935, I was with my spiritual master in the holy city of Vrindavan, taking a walk on the banks of Radhakunda. There had been quarreling amongst some of Bhakti Siddhanta's leading disciples, and this distressed him. If they were fighting now, what would they do after he had passed away? Deeply concerned, he told me, one day there will be fire in the Gaudiya Math, which will spread and destroy. I felt the urgency with which he spoke, and then he directly instructed me. I had a desire to print books. If you ever get money, print books. I never asked my spiritual master any question except one. How can I serve you? In the winter of 1936, I received a letter from him in which he once again repeated the same instruction I had received during our very first meeting. He asked me to preach Vedic knowledge all over the world. I took this letter as a confirmation. Now there was no doubt about the purpose of my life. This was the first instruction I had received from him, and ironically, the last one too. 2 weeks later, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati passed away. In 1939, the Second World War had begun. Lord Linlithgow, the Viceroy of India, announced that India was at war with Germany. Indian soldiers were dispatched to battlefields in Egypt, Iraq and Burma. Calcutta was bombed day after day. As the fire of the World War raged throughout the planet, the fire in the moth predicted by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati also broke out. Two parties emerged to be successors to their guru. Quarreling and fist fighting broke out. They sued each other in court. The preaching of the Gaudiya Math stopped. Even though I was not involved in the faction fighting, I was deeply affected. I realized the importance of strictly following the instructions of the Guru as emphasized by the Gita. Any deviation or loss of faith could lead to failure. In the midst of these calamities, I felt more than ever the need to spread Krishna consciousness. I had something to say to the world. When a man forgets that he is the son of Godhead and identifies himself with the body, he is like a man who is ever concerned with the automobile's mechanism, yet with no knowledge of the driver. The world's political leaders are expressing their disgust at their people's suffering and scarcity. After 4 years of fighting, costing millions of lives, the Second World War is still scourging the earth. Although the end is in sight, leaders have expressed not so much happiness and hope as weariness and uncertainty. Even if this war ended, would there be yet another war? Had man not yet grasped the vital lesson of how to live in peace? Without spiritual knowledge, there cannot be a solution to war. India, guided by God, can lead the world back to sanity. Being impressed by my humble endeavors, my God brothers awarded me the title Bhakti Vedanta. I accepted it with a feeling of responsibility. I knew I had to live up to it. One night, I had an unusual dream. My spiritual master appeared to me beckoning. Oh boy, leave home, give up business, renounce the world, take sannyas. I woke up in an intensely emotional state. My spiritual master was giving me a specific instruction. But I could not give up my family immediately. Besides, my business was running successfully. I needed to earn money, not just for supporting my family, but also for preaching. Still, I remained shaken by the dream. 1947. Like millions of others, I was also affected by the violent dawn of Indian independence. The freedom movement, which was started with the aim of uniting India, had ended in partition. Riots flared up throughout the country. One party was Hindu, the other Muslim. They fought and many died. And after death, no one could understand who was Hindu, who was Muslim. They simply had to be cleared from the road. I was not expecting independence to bring any solutions. Unless the people of the country were God conscious, what change would there be? A few months later, my business suffered a major setback. My servants and employees stole almost everything. The loss was immense, and the business could not be revived. This certainly was a serious blow, but somehow I saw the present circumstances through the eyes of the scripture. I remembered a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam where Lord Krishna says, "When I feel specially merciful towards someone, I gradually take away all his possessions." I was never disinclined to pursue my business, but it seemed God was forcing me. You must give it up. And I realized that He was gradually freeing me for actively pursuing my mission. I left for Jhansi. This time not for business, but for preaching. During a morning walk with one of my acquaintances, I spotted the Bharati Bhavan, an old temple complex. I was interested and decided to have a closer look. Across one of the sides of the stone temple, I saw a Sanskrit inscription, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. This was a part of the Mahamantra propagated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and spreading his teachings was the aim of my life. I considered this inscription a sign from God. Turning to my accomplice, I said strongly, "The Lord has built this building for my use." The Bharati Bhavan was built in 1939 as a memorial to a wealthy landowner, but was not in use for a few years. And I was told that if the custodian, Mr. Bhoyal, agreed to give the building in charity, I could use it for my preaching. Extremely enthusiastic, I began thinking, in this room we will have discourses and lectures. This will be the temple room. Guests here, printing press there. Somehow I convinced Mr. Bhoyal. And here in Bharati Bhavan, I started the League of Devotees. In 1857, Rani Lakshmibai, the Queen of Jhansi, had started a political revolution against the British. The rebellion had then spread to the entire country, posing a serious challenge to the foreign rulers. And now, 100 years later, I was attempting to start a spiritual revolution, which I hoped would engulf the entire world. But soon, problems followed. Earlier, Mr. Bhoyal had offered the Bharati Bhavan in charity to the League of Devotees, but when I approached him for a deed of gift, he asked me to pay 5,000 rupees and buy it. All of a sudden, the generous gift had turned into a purchase offer. There was no way in which I could raise this money in Jhansi. So, I decided to go to Calcutta. On returning home, I was confronted by the inevitable realization which had been lurking in my mind for many years. I was 58 and it was time for me to retire from family life. This is recommended by the Vedic scriptures. A person is advised to detach himself from his family in the later stages and dedicate himself completely in the service of God. Besides, over the years, I had drifted apart from my family. One day, a serious incident took place. My wife took my copy of the Bhagavatam to the market and exchanged it for biscuits. When I returned home and looked for the book, she told me what happened. I was shocked. A wave of absolute resolution passed over me. I decided to leave home. My relationship with my family, anyway, was a dead one. There was no point in continuing. Now my sons were well settled. Relatives were also there to provide support. There had been many people in past history who had given up their family for a higher cause. They had risked being misunderstood and condemned, and it would be the same for me. But I had to do it. I had fulfilled my duties towards my family. Now I had to fulfill my duty towards the world. As I left, my family thought I would soon be back. But only I knew it was all over. I would never return. Upon my return to Jhansi, I met with competition for possession of the Bharati Bhavan. The wife of the governor decided to take over the building for organizing a women's society. I tried to resist, but I was driven out. Just like the rebellion of 1857 had failed, my attempt of establishing a spiritual movement had also ended unsuccessfully. For this cause, I had left my family, and now having been thrown out of there, I had nowhere to go. I had been to Vrindavan several times, but they had been brief visits. This time I was going there to stay. Here, 5,000 years ago, my Lord Sri Krishna had manifested his earthly pastimes. This was the most sacred place for all Hindus. To live and die in Vrindavan guaranteed liberation from material sufferings and an eternal existence in the spiritual world. I was already 60 years old, but like others, I had not come to Vrindavan to retire. Rather, I had come because it was the ideal place to gain spiritual strength. Here, I wanted to prepare for my mission. On September 17, 1959, at Keshavji Gaudiya Math, I accepted the renounced order of life, sannyas. Now I was A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. For me, accepting this new title did not mean just changing to saffron and giving up family, home, business. This I had already done. It had a greater significance. It was the mandate I required, the irrevocable commitment. Now, it was only a matter of time before I would travel to the West. The knowledge contained in the Vedic scriptures had been protected by the Sanskrit language for centuries. But now, the secret had to be released to the world. If I had to succeed, I had to translate the script